Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Mataji Dandavat.
Dandavat pranams, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Carucandra, welcome.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
How are you?
I'm okay. You?
Good. Yeah. Hanging in there. Hot,
Very
but
good.
otherwise good. Yeah, it must be a little cooler for you up in Jim Thorpe though, so.
It is. Yesterday I was in Philly though, so it was hot.
It was hot yesterday, yeah. So, good. Well, people are just signing in, so feel free to get started whenever you want. Do you need me to put the verse up for you?
Please, yeah, when it's
Happy
time.
to, yeah.
Okay, so we'll just start with Jai Radha Madhava then, yeah?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janvalabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Shoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramhamsa Parivrajagacharya Asto Tarasata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramhamsa Parivrajagacharya Asto Tarasata Shri Srimad Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So today we are continuing with Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 10, Chapter 6, the story of Putana, and today's text is 14. Let me just check something real quick before I start. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here on my computer. Okay, that's what the issue was. Now let me find out where we are. Okay. Sorry, so in my folio, the letter P isn't there for some reason. It must have gotten deleted, but it's there in the word for word, so it just threw me off there. So first I will chant the verse 3 times, and then please feel free to chant it after I'm through. So this is text 14. Patamano pita dehas trigrav yutyantara druman chornayam asha rajendra mahad asit tad adbhutam. Patamano pitad dehas trigrav yutyantara druman chornayam asha rajendra mahad asit tad adbhutam. Patamano pitad dehas trigrav yantara druman chornayam asha rajendra mahad asit tad adbhutam. Please chant.
Patamano pita dehas Gavyati Antaradrumam Churnayam Asha Rajendra Mahad Asitad Adbhutam.
Patmano api tad dehas trigavayutya antardruman chunayam asa rajendra mahad asit tad abhutam.
Atmanopi tad dehas trigavayuti antradurman churnayam asya rajendra mahad asi tad adhruvatam.
Atamano pita dehas trigrav yuti antadruman churnayam asya rajendra mahad asitad abhutam.
Okay, so we'll go the word for word now. Patamana api, even while falling down, tadeha, her gigantic body, trigavyuti antaraha, within a limit of 12 miles, druman, all kinds of trees, chornayam asa, smashed. Rajendra, O King Parikshit. Mahat Asit was quite gigantic. Tat, that body. Adbhutam, and very, very wonderful. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. O King Parikshit, when the gigantic body of Putana fell to the ground, it smashed all the trees within a limit of 12 miles. Appearing in a gigantic body, she was certainly extraordinary. Purport. Because of the grievous hurt imposed upon her by Krishna's sucking her breast, Putana, while dying, not only left the room, but abandoned the village and fell down in the pasturing ground in her gigantic body. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravanipcharne Nirvishesha Shrimati Paschatya Deshatarne Omajnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So today I wanted to start by reading, if I can get to it. I'm having technical difficulties on my computer again. No, here we go. So today I want to read a little bit from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. Just a little background on his commentary. Srila Sanatan Goswami, brother of Rupa Goswami, wrote a commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, and his nephew, Srila Jiva Goswami, he sort of wrote a summarized version of that same commentary from Sanatan Goswami. And then Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he did what Srila Prabhupada referred to as writing purports to the purports. Srila Prabhupada said in the future that his disciples would write purports to the purports. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he sort of repeats some of what Srila Sanatan Goswami and Srila Jiva Goswami say, but then he also expands on it. He shares his different realizations on it. So I wanted to read his commentary, which again is based on the commentaries of the previous acharyas, because it gives a few interesting tidbits that Srila Prabhupada points out a little bit in the purport, but he doesn't really delve into. So this is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary to this verse. Because of the pain, Putana ran out of the house, passed out of the village, and fell on the outskirts. It means the outskirts of the village. The word api is used here to signify that not only while living, but even while dying, she was killing other living entities. All the trees within an area of 6 kroshas were crushed. It was remarkable that only the trees were crushed, her body having avoided crushing the houses of the village. These trees belonged to Kamsa's garden, whose fruits were for his enjoyment, according to the Vaishnava Toshini, Srila Jiva Goswami's commentary. So a few interesting things that are in this commentary is that Putana, one of the things she did was she killed children. That's how she lived her life. And so the thing that is pointed out here is that even while she was dying, she was also killing other living entities. But the significance here is that she actually had to leave the area of Vrindavan that was populated in order to fall down and kill these trees, but not any living entities. And these weren't just ordinary trees. These were trees that were specifically meant for King Kamsa's sense gratification. So she's even doing the service of irritating and causing much inconvenience to the one she serves, King Kamsa, who was trying to kill Krishna. So although she was on Kamsa's side, since Krishna was then killing her, then her body ends up crushing all of these trees that are meant for for King Kongsa's sense gratification. So these are some interesting things. Let me try to get back to this screen then. There we are. That's an interesting tidbit that Srila Prabhupada he mentions a little bit here when she says not only left the room but abandoned the village. She couldn't remain there because if she fell in the village, then she would be harming, the Brajabasis, which would not be very good. The other thing I wanted to read from, and let me get to that. And I'm not sure if anyone has done this yet because I haven't been able to tune in for all of these classes. Has anyone mentioned Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's book, Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita, where the demons are likened to the Anarthas?
Yes.
They have?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can say again. You can say again.
I'm just going to
Lightly. We've done it lightly.
Lightly.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so I'll touch on it a little bit, and then I wanted to expand on something that was related, but not necessarily in there. So first of all, I'll just read from the Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita. So Putana, as you've already mentioned, represents the pseudo-guru, and the pseudo-guru may appear in one or both of the following two forms. So the first one is a deceitful so-called guru who preaches sense gratification or liberation, or both. In some cases, this may be a person who is engaged in some Krishna conscious activity, but has not realized the course of pure devotional service, and tries to give instructions to his disciples beyond his own understanding, or without regard for their situations. So this can be someone who is just outwardly trying to preach sense gratification, or it can be someone who is an aspiring spiritualist who is just trying to speak beyond their realization. So it can be someone with good intention, or it can be someone with completely ill-motivated intentions. And the second type, because there's two forms here, the second type is the inwardly manifest spiritual guide in the form of mundane empiric reasoning faculty, means the material mind, is also like Putana. So I don't know if everyone is aware of this tidbit, but when Srila Prabhupada gave us the four regulative principles, under gambling, Srila Prabhupada would oftentimes say gambling or speculative enterprise. Speculative enterprise is a gamble because we're using our own senses, our own experiences, our own mundane logic to try to come up with the proper meaning of life. And that's a gamble because it can't, well, honestly, it can't happen. We can't reach these conclusions without the aid of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So when engaging in mundane empiric reasoning, as it's worded here, that's also a form of gambling, and that's something that we Vaishnavas are meant to avoid. So the pseudo-guru can be, as I mentioned, someone who's directly outwardly trying to mislead you, or it could be someone with good intention who is just kind of missing the point or speaking beyond their realization. And it can be also within the mind, relying on our own sense perceptions or experiences and trying to navigate through our spiritual advancement. Okay, so then one thing I wanted to talk about today and focus on, and I like to talk about this often because it's an often overlooked topic, and it's the difference between a detail and a principle. So many times in on our spiritual progress, we kind of get distracted by details. We get kind of caught up in them, and then we overlook what the actual underlying principle is. And when we do that, spiritual advancement doesn't, it's not a dynamic thing. It doesn't really proceed as well as we would want it to. And so I'm just going to give a little example of how to tell the difference between the principle and the detail, and then we can talk a bit more about, you know, what we can do in our lives to be sure that we're actually focused on principles. So just as an example, when I first moved into the Philadelphia temple, so we were in the old temple room, which I'm sure most all of you are familiar with. It's in recent history. It's there, and it's still there. We do the serve out there. So my first service, as many new bhaktas' first service was to clean the temple room. And that happened on a daily basis. And then sometimes it was a couple times a day, depending on the, you know, what was going on. And then there were special things that we would do like once or twice a week, extra cleaning, maha cleaning. And then there'd be maha cleaning, of course, where, you know, someone would read from Chaitanya Charitamrita about the cleansing of the Gondicha temple, and then all the devotees would, you know, really get into it. So the temple authority at the time was very detail oriented, which is not necessarily a bad thing in general, but for this story, for what we're talking about, anyway, you'll see what I'm getting at. So he was very detail oriented, and he made very specific lists of what it means to clean the temple room, right? So he said, okay, and, you know, he put a whole lot of thought into it. He was very conscious about it. So he said, okay, well, if you start at this corner, which is where, if you're leaving from the kitchen and you enter into the temple, back where the pujari room is, if you start from that corner and then you sweep and then you make your way toward the main door, you know, and so you work your way back and forth and you get all that dust and dirt and you sweep, and then you end up toward the main door. Then when you sweep it up with the dustpan, then you're very close to what used to be the sink room. Now it's an exit to the outside. And that's where the trash can was. So then you don't have to walk with the full dustpan across a nice clean room to put it in the garbage, right? So you do like that. And then after you do that, then you take the mop bucket and you make sure it's warm water, and you use the specific cleaner that he had. And even to the amount that you use, you know, you use 2 capfuls and you put it in there. And then you take your mop, and the mop always has to be cleaned after you use it. And then you go, and then again, you go to that corner, and then you start mopping, but you're walking on the dry part, so you're not, you know, tracking your footprints like that. And so he's very specific about how to do it, you know. So the broom, the way to go, the, you know, taking into consideration that you don't want to walk over a clean room with the dust, and then doing the mopping, right? And even, you know, the proportions of the cleaner and the temperature of the water, all that's very, very detail oriented. But say, for example, and that sounds like a really good way to clean, right? Dronacharya, did that sound about a good way to clean that particular temple room?
Yeah, I was writing it down. So
okay, good. You're taking mental notes.
We can pass on. Yeah.
Good. So, and that's a really good method to follow. But let's say, for example, that I'm about to clean the temple room, and someone accidentally spilled, there was just a fire sacrifice, someone accidentally spilled a bit of kumkum right on the floor, right in that area near where the, you know, coming out from the kitchen into the temple room. And so there's just this pile of kumkum powder there, right? And since there was also the yajna there was, you know, of course, after we offer arti, then the things go around, all the different items go around, and they're offered to the devotees. So there's the flour and the ghee wick, and there's the water, the maha water gets sprinkled about. So there's also bits of water that are sprinkled about, because all the water doesn't land on the devotee's head. Sometimes, you know, they get scattered around the room. So there's a small pile of kumkum powder there in front of the door from the kitchen. And then across the rest of the temple room, there's sprinkled water. So now if I follow the very detailed and thoughtful instructions of cleaning the temple room, and I grab the broom and I start sweeping from that area to the rest, what's going to happen? Dronacharya, you're participating. Why don't you tell me what would happen then if I followed that instructions?
You're gonna spread the red kumkum all over the temple room.
Right, and every time I go over the wet spots, it's going to get really, really messy.
I see. Right.
And it's going to turn the floor pink.
Yeah.
So sometimes when we follow details, if we don't understand the principle of what we're doing, we can actually make a situation worse, right? And that should be pretty clear to everyone with that example. You know, the temple room floor is now pink, and someone's asking, why is this floor pink? And you're like, no, I was following the process perfectly. Look, I see the list here. It is. It's written down. I use these items, but the floor is pink. So if we understand the principle of cleanliness, then we understand that, you know, a white floor is not meant to be pink. So a lot of times if we focus on the details and we overlook these principles, we end up making a big mess. And we do that in our spiritual lives too. If we're just distracted by and very adamant about the details and not understanding what the principles are. So the principles of cleanliness are that, you know, something is properly clean. I mean, it's hard to say it without using the word. It's one of those things, like the dharma of clean is it's clean. But so if there's a stain, it means sometimes you have to, you know, get down and you use a scrub brush, and, you know, sometimes there's different circumstances and situations where you have to adjust the details of what you're doing in order to actually get the goal of a room being clean, right? And I'm sure, Dronacharya, throughout the years, you've seen many examples of that temple room not being clean. You know, there's different stains on the floors that come, and, you know, every once in a while, a devotee who does understand the principles of cleanliness and say, okay, well, clearly this isn't clean, so they'll rent one of those machines that, you know, really scrub in, because after a while, if a stain sets in, there's not an easy way to get it done. You got to bring in some.
You got to buff it out.
You got to buff it out, exactly. But if everyone understands the principles of cleanliness and they do it on a daily basis, then you never have to worry about that. And you never have to worry about, you know, getting and bringing in the heavy stuff, because it's, you know, it's taken care of as soon as it happens. So similarly, also in spiritual life, on the spiritual path, we can become distracted by the different details. And the one that I usually bring up when talking about this, just because it's an easy one to understand, is it's vegetarianism. So devotees, as a side effect of being devotees, they just happen to be vegetarians because they offer everything to Krishna, and Krishna doesn't accept things that aren't vegetarian. But being vegetarian isn't enough. We read in Bhagavad Gita, Yajna Shishtashina Shanto Muchante Sarvakila Bishai Bunjate Te Tvagam Papa Ye Pachantet Makaranat. That the reason that the devotees are released from all kinds of sin is that they eat food which is first offered in sacrifice to Lord Vishnu. And others who do not, and they just eat according to their sense gratification, they verily eat only sin. So even if you are following a vegetarian diet, if you're not offering the food to Krishna, or if you're just, you know, thinking about, you know, what do I want to eat today, and this is what I'm going to eat, then that's actually sinful. It's not Krishna conscious. It's not really doing you much good. You're living a slightly more pious life, but piety doesn't get you to Vaikuntha, it gets you to the heavenly planets. So similarly, any aspect that we have on the spiritual path, we can misuse it. We can be distracted, and if we're only seeing it or as a detail, if we're not understanding the underlying principle of it, then it's not really going to help us very much in our spiritual advancement. The reason why I speak about this topic fairly often is because in all the different temples I've gone to over the years, and I've given class at, and I've talked to all the different devotees all around the world, really. And one thing I ask, and I've already asked the crowd at Philly, so I understand, I know what the answer is, but is that if anyone has ever experienced that, you know, they've been engaging in devotional service for a very long time, and but after a while, at some point, we feel that we've sort of hit a plateau, a stagnancy in our devotional service, where we're still, you know, we're still chanting, we're following the regulative principles, but we just don't feel that sense of spiritual advancement. We feel, you know, like we kind of hit a well, like I said, a plateau where we're, you know, kind of maintaining something, but we're not really getting anything new from it. And the reason why so many devotees, and not all devotees have this experience, but most of them do. It's actually a pretty big majority of them when I ask. And the reason is just that we get distracted with the details of things, and we don't look at the underlying principle. And so, luckily for us, there's actually only one principle of Krishna consciousness. So there are 4 regulative principles, which are actually, they're each one detail, well, there are 4 details that serve one principle. And the principle is, whatever you do it for Krishna. That's the principle. Krishna consciousness, that's the name of our movement, and it's what we're striving for. Krishna consciousness means we're trying to do everything for Krishna. We're conscious of what his desires are, and then we mold our lives around the way he wants things to be done. Instead of, you know, living our lives just according to our own particular whims. So that's the principle. Is it pleasing to Krishna? Is it serving Krishna, or is it serving my senses, myself? And this is a question that we have to ask ourselves on a daily basis. Anytime we make any decision, anytime we're doing anything, we should consider, and even if it's something that we've sort of put in a box as a spiritual thing, like, okay, this is, you know, a spiritual thing. I'm, you know, whether it's chanting or eating or hanging out with other devotees, these things we say, okay, no, they're always spiritual, right? But the point is, if we don't have the proper consciousness, although those things are all recommended for the path of spiritual advancement, if we don't have the right consciousness, we're not going to make that full advancement. Of course, with chanting, anytime you're chanting, you're going to make some advancement. You're getting some purification. You're associating with Krishna. But depending on what our consciousness is, we're going to actually be able to get more out of the chanting or the association with devotees. So the second thing I'll talk about, and then I'll wrap it up, because I actually want to try to keep within the time limits today, is sadhu sangha, devotee association. I've seen in my experience that we tend to consider, anytime we're near devotees or with devotees, we call that sadhu sangha, right? And what we don't understand is sangha, it doesn't mean proximity. It doesn't mean that you're near people. Sangha, association, even the word association in English, it means that you sort of align yourself with a particular purpose. You associate with it. You identify with it. And that's what this word means, sangha. So if we're not actually aligning with the common principle of serving Krishna while we're around other fellow aspiring devotees, if that's not what we're doing, then it's actually not sadhu sangha. It's hanging out with people who have similar interests, right? So we always want to make sure that when we're doing these things, when we're engaging in our different services, we want to make sure that what we're doing is actually aimed toward associating, toward making ourselves aligned with that goal of serving Krishna. Because sometimes, and I've seen, aspiring devotees will get together and they'll go to some restaurant and they'll talk about whatever the latest things that are going on. And they're not necessarily focusing on, deepening their relationship with Krishna at every moment, right? And so these things, we just have to be careful about that. We have to understand what the principle is, and we have to understand what the details are, and we don't want to get too distracted with the details. It doesn't mean we want to throw away the details. I want to make that very clear. The details are there for a reason. Krishna gave them to us, but he gave them to us so that we could follow them in a certain way that we can actually get to him. Lord Krishna gave us the Vedas chara sarvam aham veda vedyo vedantakrit vedavid eva chaham, that he compiled the Vedas and he gave them to us, and of all the Vedas I am to be known, Krishna says. So the purpose of all the Vedas is to understand Krishna, to get that, attain that Krishna consciousness. So we do follow the details, but we do so with the consciousness that we're getting toward Krishna, that we're following what he wants us to do instead of what we personally want to do. And so I will end with that and ask if there are any questions.
Ram Kumar, you have a question? Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is not question, Prabhuji, this is for clarification. I know very well, like we say, like when we are not offering prasadam to Krishna, we are verily eating sins. So I understand very well, we are verily eating sins. So how we are eating sin? Because is it because everything is given by Krishna, and in return or something in return we are not offering what we are eating to Krishna? Is it because it is sin or something else? Probably just wanted to have clarification.
Okay, that's a good question. So we learn in the invocation of Sri Upanishad, Isavasamidam Sarvam, everything belongs to Krishna. And so if we are just taking something and eating it without first offering it, then we're claiming that it's ours. And that's the basis of any sin. The basis of any sin is to do something in a self-conscious state. So when we engage in Krishna consciousness, then we're not engaging in sin. But when we're engaging in self-consciousness, it's always sin. So it's thievery to take something without A, permission, or B, acknowledging where it came from. So yes, anytime we eat anything that's not first offered to Krishna, that's why it's sin, because we're stealing, we're thinking this is meant for me, and it's Krishna's, and he'll gladly give it to us, and he doesn't protest when we take it without offering it, but we have to suffer a reaction from it.
Nice, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yeah.
Thank you. Other comments or suggestions? Or
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you can go.
Okay. I actually I really like what you said about devotees hitting a plateau at some point. And I've really been reflecting on that a lot, and about you were saying about going too much into the details. And that was kind of my conclusion on my own, that I was realizing I was focusing too much on these details of spiritual life, and it was actually pulling me away from the depth of spiritual practice. And so when I kind of had to recalibrate and get a little bit less mired in detail, more deeper in my practice and my sadhana, while still also studying and doing the other things. But the details were, we can get bogged down in the details, and it pulls our heart away from Krishna. It actually, when my experience with that was that my brain was so engaged in the details that my heart wasn't able to fully engage with my relationship with Krishna, which I'm still trying to develop. But that was just something I liked what you said about the plateau and the details. That really resonated with me. So thank you for sharing that.
I'm glad it resonated. Yeah, again, the important thing is that, and this is an experience that I think most of us have had. And generally what people will do when this happens is they'll see, they'll recognize, okay, that I've been distracted by the details. So then what they'll do, their tendency to react is just to get rid of the details, and try something else. And they try to go inward, and then they don't associate with devotees at all, or they'll stop doing certain things. And that's called overcorrecting. We actually, if we understand the principle, then like I said, with cleaning, it's not that, if once I made the floor pink doing the, sweeping kumkum over drops of water, I don't abandon cleaning and just say, oh no, see, cleaning doesn't work. No, it's, I just didn't understand what the principle was. So the important thing is that we have to understand what the principle is, and then we can actually assess whether we are properly engaging in devotional service. And then when it's not working, we see, okay, well, somehow I'm not making that connection. And then we work on making that connection instead of getting rid of it, which I know, but I just want to make that clear for everyone, because that's a common thing too. And that's why we remain on that plateau for so long, is that, we sort of switch back and forth between, okay, no, I'm just going to engage in what I think is spirituality. And then we're trapped in these details. And then we throw out those details, and then we try to do something else. And both sides, we're not doing the complete thing. And until we do that, we're not going to make so much advancement.
Yeah, to me, that's like the spiritual pendulum. I call it the pendulum. It's like we swing from completely one side to the other, and somehow you have to let it swing a little closer to the middle.
Yes. It's there's a concept. I'm trying to remember which book it's in. I think it may be Midoriya Kadambini, but it's the Bogatiyag. It's the pendulum. You go between enjoying and renouncing, and enjoying and renouncing. It's a similar thing. Thank you. Something else?
Okay. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, this is Suman. Thank you very much for your nice class. I learned that this is a very important lesson, that when we chant or associate with devotees, we should keep Krishna consciousness in mind. We should focus our mind on Krishna. So this is a very good realization. And I have one question, that during daytime, I eat so many things like cereal, chocolate, or ice cream. So should we offer it to Krishna before eating?
Absolutely.
Candy, everything?
Everything we eat, it should be offered to Krishna first.
Okay, that I was confused about that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Hare Krishna.
Now, some people say, no, well, there's certain things that, there are certain things you shouldn't offer to Krishna. You don't offer him meat or anything like that. But if we get in this habit, even if it's something that, some people say, well, you don't offer things that were cooked by non-devotees to Krishna, right? And that's true. On an altar, you don't do that. But devotees don't eat anything that's not offered to Krishna. So if we have some sort of attachment to some food that's, made by non-devotee, then at least go through the process of offering it and understanding that this isn't meant for me, this isn't mine. And although you do have some sort of attachment to it, you still have to dovetail that. So you offer it. And then maybe eventually, since you do that, since you offer this thing to Krishna, then he may eventually give you the intelligence on how to make it yourself, or how to make something that's, even more pleasing. Or maybe you'll lose your taste for, subpar things. But definitely, yeah, offer. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Something else?
I just wanted to, Mataji asked a very good question, like the cereals, the ice creams and all to be offered out Krishna or not. So we should try to make sure that should not be contaminated, right? Until and unless we are not very sure, somewhere in the animal extract also comes in those. So we have to be sure, either we should prepare those ice creams or something like that, or then we should offer to Krishna.
Absolutely. It's always best. The ideal situation is that everything that you're making for Krishna is, it's made by devotees. So ideally, you're even growing your own vegetables and you're harvesting your own grains, and everything is done by the Vaishnavas. That's the ideal situation. Unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world, so there are some exceptions we can make, but there are also exceptions we can't make. For example, you mentioned animal extracts, so Krishna doesn't accept those, and so neither should we. But if we are accepting something, it should first have gone through Krishna. We don't accept anything that's not offered to Krishna, because that's stealing. That is the definition of self-conscious. We're not aware of what Krishna wants in that situation. We're just concerned about what we want. And so when we engage in offering things that, like I said, they're not ideal, it's made by someone else, but at least, there's no animal byproducts in it. So when we engage in that, then Krishna sees that, okay, this aspiring devotee is not as worried about sense gratification as, the rest of the world. So then intelligence comes, and then we start change. We'll stop eating things that were, cooked by non-devotees, and then, we can work our way up to the ideal, but we can't do that if we're not working on our consciousness. If we're just thinking, well, whatever, I just want to eat this, and it's not right to offer to Krishna, but I'm going to eat it anyway, that's not proper spiritual consciousness. So if we just keep engaging like that, then there's no chance of us getting to the ideal, right? Exactly. But if we do that, then so it's a path to the ideal, and that's what we want to focus on. So nobody's perfect. We all engage in something. That's why we're in the material world. We wouldn't be here if we didn't engage in something that was detrimental to our spiritual life. That's the situation we're in. So the point is to get from where we are now to the ideal, and how the way that goes is offer everything to Krishna.
Yeah, very, very nice project to start with, and then Krishna will give the understanding, and then we can become ideal, and we can do that.
Absolutely, because think of it as a relation. We have a relationship with Krishna, and so at the beginning of a relationship, you kind of, you deal with what you know, right? I only deal with what I know because I don't know what you know. So if I'm getting to know you, I'm telling you about the things I like, and I'm, taking you to places that I like. But then I start finding out what kind of places you like, and what kind of, things you like to do, what kind of things you like to eat. That's how a relationship works. And then as I understand those things, then if I want to please you, then I take you to the places that you like, that I know you'll like, and we'll do the things that I know you want to do. We'll eat the things that I know you want to eat. So it's like that. It's that's how we get.
Nice project. Thank you so much, project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Carucandra Prabhu.
Yes.
Yes, I really appreciated your point on the as well as the other devotees here that have expressed it. The point on the understanding the purpose and meaning behind the details that we're doing, and the example of cleaning the floor definitely illuminated that this idea. So that was very vivid. As you were talking, I also was trying to think of where's an example like this given, in either a pastime or the scriptures. And I was thinking, and what came to mind, and I don't know if this is correct. You can let me know. So when the Brahmins and the wives of the Vedic Brahmanas, the ones that were performing all these yajnas, and then when Krishna and Balaram sent the cowherd boys to say, "Hey, Krishna's, Krishna and Balaram are hungry," they just dismissed them. So they were performing all these great, mantras and their yajna and this and that, and they were just, when it came to Krishna, they were missing the point. But then you had the wives of the Vedic Brahmanas. They just I guess they understood the ultimate principle. Is that correct? Is that, I'm just trying to think of an example. Is that one that would illuminate that principle?
Yeah, that's certainly one good example of it. And then, of course, the Vedic Brahmanas ended up cursing all of their upbringing because, they, all of their training and their austerities and their sacrifice, they were all for nothing because we didn't understand the final point. So that is one good pastime. But another pastime that illustrates the point is, Krishna and where he went to eat. So he was offered a big feast at a big palace where he'd get all this, wonderful stuff. And he passed. He said, no, I'm not going to go, because he understood that it wasn't being offered with the proper consciousness. But when this fellow was peeling bananas and accidentally handing Krishna the peel instead of the fruit of the banana, he was throwing away the fruit and giving the peels. He very much accepted those peels with relish because they were being offered with love. So even though it's the details of food is that it should be nice, right, and properly cooked and like that, and presented in a nice way. But Krishna didn't go to that feast. He instead relished those banana peels because they were offered with love. So that that's another good one, is because the principle is love. And that example also shows us that even if we're not doing it very well, if the love is there, then we're going to make advancement. But even if we're doing something materially perfectly, the perfect feast, the presentation, everything, Krishna won't accept it because there's no love there. And that's the principle.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure. Yeah, lots of pastimes.
Prabhu, I have a small confusion and question, or whatever it is, doubt.
Okay.
I am from South, okay, in India. Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is, I grew up in like a situation, and they used to say, my parents, and they used to say, morning you have to take shower and clean clothes and washed clothes, and then cook and then offer. That's what I went through. But most of the times, but younger generation, they just don't follow that. In that case, whether that offering to Krishna, whatever time we cook, is it appropriate, or what you suggest?
Well, that ties into what we were just talking about too, and that's a very good question, because in one sense, the way you were brought up, that is the proper way. You should be clean, and you should be in a proper state of mind when you're cooking, and then only then can you offer it. That's the ideal, and that's what we want to get to. Kids these days, they shower maybe once a week. Yeah. And so they're dirty when they're cooking, and they're just throwing stuff in a microwave, and
not even water clothes they use.
It's certainly not ideal. Yeah, it's a bad situation. But if somehow they're able to get that consciousness, if they actually get the consciousness that they're doing this for Krishna, and even if they're moochy and offering this really bad stuff, they'll eventually become purified, and they'll get to that standard where they will wake up early, and they'll do their proper puja. They'll mark their bodies with tilak. They'll be in the proper state of mind, and then they'll engage in the service. So that's like we said, that's what we want to get to.
May I share with you what I learned one story about this specific aspect you're speaking about?
Yes, go ahead.
So I know extremely little about Shiva Purana. I'm from the southern part of India too, I hail from. And there, one of the Shiva Bhaktas, he is a hunter by profession. So he doesn't believe in bathing, etc. But he is a devotee of Lord Shiva. And so in the forest, he takes a piece of meat from what he hunted. And he couldn't find any vessel to wash the Shivalingam with. So he filled his mouth with water. And then that was what he washed the lingam with. And then in one hand, he had some flour, I believe. He threw the flour on the lingam. And then he threw the piece of meat that was his main offering to the Lord. And the story goes that Lord Shiva gleefully accepted everything that he did because it was purity of heart that mattered. I don't know if that's an analogy that suits this, but I thought I'd share it with you.
Yeah, it definitely suits the situation. What we have to be careful with is, a lot of times we like to make things extreme. We like to say something is it's either good or it's bad, right? We want to know. So some people say, no, tradition's bad because it's not necessary, because as you said in the past time you mentioned, it's the love that matters. So you don't need the tradition, right? But of course, we also understand that if you have the love, then you'll eventually get to the point where you will follow the tradition, because the tradition is given by Krishna. So unless you're actually on that middle platform and you understand both, that it's the love and following it in the right way, then you're going to be lost. Because you can also, as Dronacharya Prabhu was mentioning with the Yajnik Brahmanas, they were following everything perfectly. They were getting up early, they were taking their bath, they were doing the proper yajna, but they didn't have the consciousness, and they totally overlooked the whole point, and they condemned themselves for it. So both things are important, and we can't. And like as the class was about getting trapped in the details, we can't just think that the process, the external process is what's getting it. And that's not it. It's the consciousness. So if we can't change our consciousness, whether we're living in a gutter or living in South India being brought up properly, if the consciousness isn't there, it's not there.
But the point was they also stressed that was okay for a hunter because he was following his niyama.
Yeah.
The same is not okay for a Brahmana or a Vaishya.
Yes.
It is okay only for a hunter.
Yeah.
They made the distinction.
Absolutely.
Not only that, Prabhu, if it is unavoidable situation, then there's nothing we can do. But what I'm talking is daily, I was talking is, the daily younger generation and cleanliness. And then, the way I grew up, while cooking, chant Krishna's name and then cook.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because whatever you are cooking, that love goes into that, and whoever eats the prasadam, Krishna first, Krishna, and then prasadam, that that will give positive this thing. So that's how I was born and brought up. But younger generation, I feel sometimes it is uncomfortable. And during whatever clothes and whenever time, and they don't wash the new clothes, keep on wearing that and cooking. Clean and good. But that is not the thing. But that bothers me as an elderly person. It bothers me. But I think you're telling now this material world, and we are in this, and this Kali Yuga. I don't know what to say. So thank you very much for your nice class.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
I just visited South India recently. I took a tour, pretty much the entire South, both East and West. And so much culture down there. It's a wonderful place.
Did you get a chance to visit any of the 108 Vaishnava kshetrams?
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Of course. That's what it is.
Yeah, we followed, there were a group of us that do service for the Mayapur Gurukul. About 7, sometimes there were more, sometimes there were fewer. There were mainly 7 to 10 of us, and we pretty much followed the tour that Lord Chaitanya took when he traveled South India. My favorite was Ahobilam.
Oh, we belong to that mutt, Ahobilam mutt.
Jai.
Yeah. So you probably visited Sri Rangam?
Yes, yep.
Lot of temples in South, I think, mainly. And we grew up with that kind of culture. And slowly in India also, the culture is little bit, it is reducing. And that's what bothers older generation.
Yeah, it's true. We all have a lot to learn from one another.
Yeah.
So keep.
But your that cleaning aspect, that in the temple, that's a very good thing to follow that. What you call spiritual this thing. It was very good, and cleansing of the heart is mainly it needs. Like we are cleaning the temple, we have to clean the heart. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for, you try to go to the inner meaning because many of the verses have layers of meaning, and you try to go deep into whenever you give an upanyasam. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Ram Kumar, you had a question? You had a final comment?
Yeah. So the last part where it was going like Vijaya Mataji mentioned like that with cleanliness and purity to have that prasadam to be prepared and to maintain the cleanliness. That is very, very good. I mean, the way it is meant for ideal things, yeah, always. As Prabhuji also, Ranganathan Prabhuji mentioned like for that hunter, he was doing that. And also he mentioned like that is not a good way to do. That is for hunter only, and Bhava represents there. So I just wanted to mention like even Sisupal, who was very envious from the childhood to the Krishna, and Kansa also he was very envious to the Krishna. They wanted to kill him even. In fact, they also got liberated. So they were in the demoniac nature, kind of demoniac way where they were remembering and they got liberated. So we being Vaishnava, we being like Vaishnava, and we have to come to the platform or understanding like we have to be clean and we have to prepare the prasadam by cleanness. We have to also make sure that there should not be contamination in that. At least we should check that in the ingredients by what it is made of, and we have to like at least in the morning, not by weekly, we should take the bath and then offer the bhoga to Krishna. So just wanted to tell like the demoniac nature we should not follow. We should follow that mode of goodness, and then we should worship to Krishna and offer to Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Carucandra Prabhu and all the devotees for a lively discussion. Carucandra Prabhu, you brought up so many wonderful, wonderful points that hopefully we can meditate on. We had one comment from Mother Shobha Radhe, who's on the phone, and she sends her appreciation for your class, and mentioned many points that she'll meditate on. Tonight, I wanted to invite all the devotees. His Holiness Giriraj Swami will be speaking at 7:30. He'll be speaking on Srila Prabhupada, just Srila Prabhupada Gita. So please join us. Hear from such an exalted soul. A lot of personal association with Srila Prabhupada, as well as working on some key projects in ISKCON. He was helped develop. He was in charge of overseeing the Juhu Temple during its construction and all the land acquisition and the kind of fight that went on between ISKCON and Mr. Nair and that whole Leela, and the Hare Krishna land. If you've ever been to the Juhu Temple, how wonderful of a spiritual complex that is. So Maharaj was involved with that. And how he met Srila Prabhupada was quite fascinating too, which I believe he's going to expand upon that. So please come, take association. Good, wonderful sadhu sangha tonight at 7:30 on the same Zoom channel. So Carucandra, we hope to see you soon. Again, back here for our Srimad Bhagavatam class. And in the meantime, please stay well, stay healthy, and Yeah. Thank you.
Jai.
Yeah.
Hare
Hare
Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare
Thank
Krishna,
you.
Prabhuji. Thank you so much for wonderful lecture.
Jai. Thank you.
Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo.
Jai.